a lot of places that we can start, but one of them that I think we absolutely have to address is yesterday we went to Fort Lauderdale. We did a rally for the Fight for 15. For those of you who may or may not know Linda Joseph, she is the primary liaison for Fight for 15 South Florida. She is a tremendous activist. She is somebody who definitely puts in the work.
Check out our interview with her. We have had Linda on the show on our Uplifting Labor segment. You could definitely check her out on there.
And I think it went really well.
I love a good march and rally with Linda.
Well, Jen had the opportunity to speak, and that, of course, I think went over very well. Just my opinion. But ultimately,
notice how I'm always the person who doesn't need to use the megaphone.
Well, that's true. You were like, I don't need this. I could just do my thing.
Well, I mean, I've been told I'm a little loud, so I might as well use that to my advantage. But I've never done very well with megaphones.
One of the things that I did notice yesterday was that the construction workers seem to want to drill like right at the time that people wanted to talk. I don't want to get in any.
I don't think so, because they weren't like working for McDonald's.
No.
So I don't think so.
But they certainly were, you know, they made it a little bit more difficult. So you projecting loud was obviously a good thing.
Right. Oh, I'm loud. So the Fight for 15, what's interesting is when we first got there, before it started, I was actually speaking with the owner of that McDonald's, and he was a nice guy. He came out and he saw my Fight for 15 shirt, and he said, you guys already got that. What else do you know, what are you doing? Because Florida, we voted for an amendment that has, forced a $15 minimum wage. That's in another 4 years that'll happen. So it's not like it's right now anyway. But a couple of things. One, that doesn't address the national minimum wage issue. We need a federal minimum wage. Okay, so for one. And the other thing I want people to know about is that McDonald's has recently done some really nice PR work for themselves, and they claim that they've given their employees a $15 minimum wage. Mm-hmm. And that's what it looks like. It looks like that in writing.
But it's not true.
But it isn't really correct. So what happened is that McDonald's is now giving a $15 an hour minimum wage to people that work in their corporate stores. But here's the catch, is that 95% of McDonald's are not corporate, they're franchised. So for them to say we're giving a $15 minimum wage gives this idea that, wow, McDonald's workers are all going to be No. Our McDonald's workers here in Fort Lauderdale make $8.15 an hour in Fort Lauderdale. That's just absurd. That's just, I don't know. It's absurd. So we had a good rally yesterday. I thought it was good.
And I think we definitely got a very good response.
I pulled a nice speech out of my butt.
No, you did. But we still ultimately ended up having a lot of people drive by that were in support. Yeah. But also a lot of people who were not in support. And they really think that this is like something detrimental for people to make a living wage. It's just so ironic how people who consider themselves conservative don't want people to make a living wage. Regardless of what the job is, the society has changed so much where it used to just be you were criticized for not having a job. Now it's your job isn't good enough. And as far as I can tell, you want people to be paid enough to live so they don't have to depend on the government.
Well, it's that, but it's also this complete disrespect. So you want people to do those jobs, but yet you don't think they're jobs worthy of doing because you don't think they're worthy of being paid for. So does that mean that you think that we should go back to like a feudal, serf and lord system? Are we, what's the plan? So you want people to do jobs, but they shouldn't be compensated so that they can live. So I'm not understanding that. And then you also don't want to provide people with a security safety net, social service or whatever, to keep everybody above a line of dignity.
Well, I think that also speaks to an even bigger
Wouldn't
problem.
we rather just pay people and have them be working and paying for themselves? Like, wouldn't we just rather people be able to work and support themselves?
You would think that would be the case. And what I can tell you is that a lot of people now, and this is why this is the first article that we're talking about, which is changed by the pandemic, many workers will not return to their old jobs. So many of you have obviously heard the stories recently as it pertains to, people don't want to go back to work, and
people are lazy. They're just going to enjoy living off of
so
this.
We're going to force them
end their unemployment benefits.
Yep. So we're going to force them back to work, and here's how we're going to do it. We're going to remove their unemployment benefits after what they've dealt with for the past year via the pandemic. And President Biden is okay with this. So as far as I can see, they would much rather side with shareholders and management, then with workers, force them to go back to work for menial wages.
And by the way, in crappy ass jobs,
Correct.
let's be real. They don't care that, like, there is something greater to life than working to exist. And
I agree.
And until we get to that point, there is no real freedom here. This is not freedom. This is just sort of slavery, but, you know, where you're transporting yourself to and from your job, I guess. But like, I don't, you know, yeah, there are people that have been collecting unemployment, and yeah, they don't want to go back to their crappy ass job because they realize that life is short, their job sucks, and they're not paid enough. And you know what? They're right. So, you know, it isn't that people are lazy. One of the women that spoke yesterday, who's a McDonald's employee, she got up and spoke. This woman works 3 jobs.
Yeah.
Including her job at McDonald's. She works 3 jobs and is still behind on rent. And that is the opposite of lazy. So these are working people that have no problem working, but they just, you know, they're starting to recognize that they're needed and recognize their value and not want to be taken advantage of anymore.
It's also the fact, the other factor, of course, is gentrification. That is a very big part of the process.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes people could be living in an area for a certain amount of time and they're fine there, but then the next thing you know, the cost of living doubles, triples, or quadruples, and then, you know, over the course of a few years, and you just don't even see it coming. It just happens gradually, or sometimes it happens and it accelerates. And look, it's not so easy. I mean, look, I'm cut from a different cloth. Like I can literally,
yes, you are.
I can literally pick up and go, and I'll go live somewhere, anywhere, quite frankly. But most people are not like that. He's
kind of like a hobo.
That had nothing to do with what I was saying. But of course,
but you do sleep in your car sometimes.
If I have to, then I do. That's different.
Point is, you can pick up and go anywhere. Yes.
Yes. And of course, a lot of people don't want to do that. They like where they are and they want to be able to, you know, again, this is the thing about community and being able to connect with people. One of the biggest problems we have here in South Florida is that it is an extremely expensive place to live in many, many parts. And it's very transient. A lot of people do not stay here very long, and most people are not born here. So they're not planting their roots here. That's why Jen is an anomaly.
I'm an anomaly.
You know, 2nd generation South Floridian, and a sort of like a dying breed in many ways. And so, you know, people are either coming here from another place, or the people who have been here, they're leaving. So understanding this factor of why we want people to be paid a living wage. And you can make the argument, well, a $15 minimum wage is not necessary in Casper, Wyoming. Okay, maybe that might be true. But in South Florida, $15 an hour is maybe getting you above the poverty level.
You know,
maybe.
And I have no problem with policies that address disparities in location. I think that it's okay if you set that minimum wage needs to be whatever percentage of median income in the location, and have that. That's fine. I don't necessarily think somebody living in New York needs to make the same money as somebody living in Casper, Wyoming.
I agree.
So I mean, we can, but there is a way to do that. But the point is, and that's why I'm kind of not psyched on the whole that they say fight for 15, because really what we need is a living wage.
Correct.
15 really isn't high enough. They've been asking for that for so many years. At this point, it really should be more like 20 at minimum. And so, a living wage. And I'm okay with that fluctuating in different places. Like I would be amenable to such policies because I do think that's reasonable.
Another thing that
where are you going today?
I'm gonna jump around in a second, but I think that the best place for us to take it in the next progressive step, of course, is with Katie Porter. You know, everything as it relates to cost of living.
I love her.
It's all connected. It's all interconnected, and the topic of healthcare is becoming more and more front and center. More and more front.
Let me just say, people, if you have not ever watched Katie Porter questioning these CEOs, and this isn't the first time, there's multiple examples of this. Please do yourself a favor. Find yourself video clip of Katie Porter questioning these CEOs, because she's subtle but brilliant, and she's so good, and she just gets them to look like such idiots, and she gets them to walk into it, and she's so good.
And I think what's great about Katie Porter compared to a lot of others is that Katie is an equal opportunity offender. And what I mean is Katie does not just single out the GOP. She singles out the makers and shakers of our society. Going after the CEO of a major pharmaceutical company, they don't give a damn who's in elected office as long as they are under their thumb.
She's about economic justice, and so economic justice, and so really her. Really the target of what she's always aiming for are always these shyster and capitalist leader oligarch people that are sitting on golden parachutes while their workers aren't even allowed to unionize.
Also one of the biggest problems. That's why they are able to act with such reckless abandon, because they know that there's no way they're going to get in trouble. And even if they did, they're going to get a slap on the wrist. They'll pay a high, you know, a $2,000 an hour major law firm to get everything swept away. Yeah. You know, you'll pay a major fine. You're not going to do jail time. You'll do community service.
But she's so good. And she really gets all of her little ducks in a row before she does this, like spot on. I would have liked to watch her litigate a case at some point. I don't know if I think she was. I know she's an attorney, and I do believe she was a litigator, but I would love to see her doing like cross-examination on somebody. It would be really cool. Yeah.
And she is definitely as good she's as bright a light as you're going to find in the political arena. And of course, she, like I said, she did her thing the other day. If you haven't seen it, Ali,
basically the gist of it is that she was going after in the pharmaceutical industry, and she was questioning their CEO about the different allocations of money, and how much they spend on R&D, how much they spend on advertising. And this guy really just came off looking like such an idiot.
He didn't really want to answer the question. Of course, but I got to tell you, when she got to him to admit how much they spend every year on advertising and marketing, it's in the tens of millions of dollars. But the truth is, they spend that kind of money because they know the return on investment is always going to be on the upside, and that's what it comes down to.
But their biggest, the biggest problem is that they're constantly crying. Not poor, I guess, but that they need to have these prices because of all the money on R&D. But here's the thing. The money on R&D comes from our taxes. Yeah. We pay for that research, and then they get a patent on it. And then we also have to pay them exorbitant prices for the money, for the drugs that our money helped create. And she's just not standing for it. And it was really cool.
No, and she did a really great job. And of course, when it comes to justice, we don't know if anything is going to happen to Trump and his family, but the New York Attorney General, for whatever reason, her name is slipping me right now, but she's very politically ambitious. So there could be,
So they've upped the case. So now we know that it's not just an investigation, it's a criminal investigation.
Yeah, Trump's definitely in some hot water now. And it's really just a question of, whether they're going to get him or whether this case ultimately sets precedents going forward, which is obviously what you hope for. You hope that if Trump does ultimately suffer the consequences from this. I mean, look, there are backroom deals that are made all the time. I still maintain that the ultimate backroom deal with Trump is going to be that he doesn't get to run for president again.
Well, I think, and ultimately, that's what this is all about. I think that really what they're trying to do is prevent him from being able to run again and keep him so tied up.
And they may very well do that because if, again.
And these are all probably extremely legitimate and credible claims.
Correct.
Here's the thing. For every rat you see, there's 50 you don't. If this is the information, and also, if they're confident enough to be sort of going public with the idea that they're looking into him with criminal charges, then they're pretty confident. And what's interesting with him is that how many times do you think he's done something and gotten away with it versus when he gets caught, right? Thousands. So the fact that they have something on him that they think is actually, going to stick is interesting.
Well,
maybe it is a distraction. I don't know.
There is never a shortage of things that he has managed to get himself into.
Oh no, he's a complete criminal.
No, he is, but he does it with such impunity, and that's what drives people nuts. He really is just that type of person who doesn't care. And a lot of people don't like that. They like their criminals to be a little bit more on the DL when it comes to that type of behavior.
Well, that's always the thing with Trump is he says the quiet part out loud. You're not supposed to say that.
But you really should, because we really are. We're living in such
Syria. We're guarding the oil. Yeah.
Totally guarding the oil.
Yeah,
Totally
thank you. We're not
oil.
there because we care about them having a chemical attack. We could not care less.
He has something to say.
Oh, good God. Here he comes.
There is no way I am going down. Believe me when I tell you, this is just a distraction.
See the handcuffs?
It is. I've never met a pair of handcuffs I didn't like, but not for those reasons. I really appreciate this opportunity.
That's what your friend Jeffrey Epstein says about you.
He doesn't know me. I never met him. He's total fabrication.
Yeah.
Fake news, totally fake news. But in terms of whether or not I'm going down, Trump never goes down. Trump stays up top, always up top. And I like being on top. Just
gross.
ask the ladies. And in terms of where we go forward, this is just a distraction. I'm going to be back in a big way. Believe me when I tell you, never getting in trouble. They are just trying. It's a total left-wing conspiracy. Big left-wing conspiracy. They just don't like me. And they're afraid I'm going to run again and I'm totally going to win. Believe me, if I run again, I'm going to win. And they know it and they don't want me to run. So they got to stop me now. Anyway,
I'm going to give you the hook.
I got to go. I got to go talk to my attorneys. Not for anything related to doing anything wrong.
Okay.
Totally not anything wrong. See you later. But I do think he's in trouble.
So what is that? But that doesn't mean that they are canceling the Olympics, right?
No,
because I think
it's very important because again, the issue of COVID, we try to be as reasonable and as diplomatic about the issue as we possibly can, because we know that there's there's still this mass hysteria that is surrounding this issue. But one of the things we've always found interesting is you get people who have gotten the vaccination and yet they want to wear their mask. When you see people wearing masks in their car, there is this fear of living that is something that I just don't understand. And it's not something that I will ever understand because I think it's pointless, but that's a whole other story. Now, apparently the issue of COVID, and I'm only going to guess that it has something to do with the new variant strands that have been discovered. There are doctors in Tokyo that are calling for the cancellation of the Olympics. That's how serious.
Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. The thing is, I feel bad for athletes that train their whole lives for this, but to be honest,
I agree.
The Olympics does nothing but bankrupt so many countries. Like it's just such a.
Can you elaborate on that? Because I'm not really familiar. Well, like how that works exactly.
Well, the amount of money that countries have to invest into infrastructure to be able to host an Olympics, they don't make that back, and they end up going into. In fact, that was sort of, I don't know if it was like the straw that broke the camel's back in Greece, in Athens, but that's what happens. I know in Vancouver, they were able to sort of recoup to some extent, but there's no money to be made. And then the facilities just basically sit there like abandoned ghost towns, like old Olympic villages and stuff like that. So it's really not financially a worthwhile venture. And a lot of economies just can't hack it. So I think it's kind of ridiculous, personally.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
But whatever.
Yeah.
So we might not have an Olympics. Is that what you're saying?
I'm thinking that it's possible that it won't happen, but this is the thing. From a health standpoint, and that is and Cheyenne is right.
Yeah, they do get a lot
of tourism money. That is a very big part of the equation.
It's never enough.
But here's the thing: if the rational thing to do is to cancel the Olympics, but the economic thing to do is to allow it to go on. Economics always wins.
But what I'm saying is that Olympics in general are not economically good. They're bad. They're in the red. Every city that does an Olympics ends up significantly in the red for it if they don't have enough reserves to do it. I mean, there are cities that have to build highways in order to accommodate. I mean, this is a major infrastructure development process that takes place years in advance of hosting an Olympics, like up to 10 years in advance, they start preparing for this. And the amount of tourism they get during the Olympics does not come anywhere near what they need to sort of pay for what they're doing. And so
I agree.
It's financially, it's not a winner.
So ultimately, do I think that this is going to be canceled? No, I don't. Because again, you're talking about a lot of investment.
But that's more about advertising money, and corporate money. That's not what I'm talking about. Is the pain to the municipality. But when you're talking about like Coca-Cola and Nike and all them, they love that. They love the Olympics.
I definitely agree. But one thing I will say, I mean, I always was under the impression that the Olympics was overblown in terms of what it actually did economically. there is no comparison to the Olympics and the Super Bowl. Now, the Super Bowl actually does stimulate a local economy, at least for a month or two. And that does matter. But again, different sport, different circumstance.
And it doesn't require the same investment.
Correct. There's not this whole infrastructure plan that's only going to be used one time.
Right. It's yes, there's extra security. I mean, yes, there's definitely things that to be done to prepare for a Super Bowl, but you're not hosting thousands of people in dormitories and having a village and it's a whole different thing. It is financially beneficial to do a Super Bowl. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.